Good afternoon, everybody. Saturday afternoon. It's raining out here in Bangalore. It's quite cloudy for the last couple of days. Things have started cooling down a little bit. Hopefully, other places too are finding some respite from the weather. Today, I've got along with me Kingshuk. Kingshuk, can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. So I'm a coach based in Bombay. I've been working for about 25 plus years with corporates like CRISIL, Bharti AXA, L&T, G Capital, and Fidelity Investments. And I've been coaching for about 8 plus years. Happy to be here and really pleased to have all of you in the midst. Thank you.
Thanks, Kingshuk. And my name is Aditya. Based in Bangalore, have close to 20 plus years of experience in large corporates in different finance roles. Currently, I'm a life and executive coach with specific focus on emotional intelligence. And I would like to welcome you all to Coach's Corner. The guest we have today is Priya. Priya is based in Chennai. Hi, Priya.
Hi, Aditya. Hi, Kingshuk. Good to be here.
Welcome, Priya.
Thanks for coming over. So just a little bit about Priya. She has over 20 years of experience as an executive coach, a counselor, and a facilitator. She's a master certified coach, credentialed by the International Coaching Federation, ICF. EIS senior practitioner, credentialed by the European Mentoring and Coaching Council. She also has a master's in applied psychology. She's a speaker at various forums, has facilitated a lot of leadership development programs with specific emphasis on emotional intelligence. In addition to all these things and having worked with a lot of corporate houses across the industries, she's also a mentor coach. So thanks a lot for accepting our invite and joining us, Priya, on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, look forward to this conversation.
Great. So we wanted to know more about mentor coaching. Can you talk about the role played by a mentor coach?
Yeah, I think it's it's a great question where I think it's a very critical role when it comes to a coach's journey towards either towards credentialing or towards establishing oneself as a professional coach. So many things happen, just like in any other professional journey, right? You have a mentor in your organization, you have mentors who are friends. Basically, I see the role as someone who perhaps who's not afraid to ask questions, is not afraid to kind of push the mentee to the deeper end, is open to what or how the person is going through their journey. So in many ways, Aditya, it's about embodying a certain mindset, like we call the coaching mindset. It's really about that mindset of taking the learner from where they are, or a mentee from where they are, to what they can potentially be or become. And you're really partnering in that journey with the other person. So sometimes it's about guiding, sometimes it's just about being available, sometimes it's about being a role model. Sometimes it's about being a confidant, right? In your professional journey, there might be hurdles, some of it personal, some of it otherwise, and having someone to just talk through sort of helps. And we know that, and most of us here are coaches. So sometimes you really want answers, right? You're not in a position to want to reflect. You just want to know. Right. And that a coach is not able to offer, but a mentor can offer that space. And above all of it, for me, Aditya, it's about being a cheerleader for the other, right? To champion their journey and their learning and watching that growth and journey, being witness to that, I think for me that offers great amount of fulfillment. Um, so it's a very critical role, I would say. And earlier on my journey, I was practicing quite a bit in the space of psychology as a psychologist, and it's not a very regulated industry in terms of some people mandate it, some people don't, for you to have a supervisor or someone to help you when you're a coach yourself, beyond credentialing I'm talking about. You do face challenges, and you want to have somebody to reach out and say, what did you do? Right? How was it like for you? How did you navigate this dilemma when you had this challenge with a client? So you do need mentors who can support you in this journey. So I find it, I think it's a very, very critical role, and I thoroughly enjoy that part of my avatar, if you may call it.
Fantastic, fantastic. In fact, you're right. It's always good to have that partner with you, and so very often we are not in that frame of mind to reflect, introspect, and wait for the answers to emerge. We just want to know it now, and and as a mentor coach, it helps. It helps to have a mentor coach in that particular part of the journey. So, how would one become a mentor coach? What are the trainings? What are the certifications? What are the timelines? How does it work?
So if you're looking at being a mentor coach under the International Coaching Federation, under that umbrella, basically your credential should have gone through one round of renewal. We know that a credential's validity is for 3 years. After 3 years, one needs to renew it. So you should have had one renewal under your belt, and you can register with ICF then as a mentor coach. They have a mentor coach registry. Okay. It's a paid service, so I think it costs $50 or something, and you can enlist yourself over there, and then you have a pool of coaches who are in their training journey, in their learning journey, who can reach out to you for mentoring. So there is no specific course, I would say, for mentoring coaches. Okay. It's something that you would kind of learn along the way. But there are programs where you can become a certified assessor. Now, assessing is a part of mentoring, not completely. So that is possible with ICF. You have to register for a training, and there's a separate credential where ICF looks at you as an assessor. But more than credential, more than certification, I think there is also how you show up as a mentor. For me, that is something beyond credential and certificate and timelines, right? So someone who is willing to be available for the other person, provide the psychological safety for them to ask, be vulnerable. Because why do you need a mentor? It's usually when you're struggling with something.
True.
So you really need somebody you're comfortable with. You feel safe enough to say, you know what, I goofed up, or this didn't work for me and I really got stuck. It's not easy to say. So that chemistry between the mentor and the mentee is critical. And I think it's also important for the mentor to not create dependency, right? So the idea is not to have the mentee be dependent on the mentor, but to find their own way. It's just a temporary hiccup or a temporary support. Sometimes it's about also understanding the competencies, right? Coaching competencies. So for me, it's who you are as a person, your mindset, that's far beyond the certificate and the credential and being registered somewhere.
True. You put it very, very clearly and in a very crisp manner. And one thing that I really liked the way you've talked about creating that safe environment where the mentee can trust, and also not create the dependency, because when we start advising to people, it there are high chances of the receiving end to start becoming dependent on a mentor. So the mentor should probably strike that fine balance. Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Any questions from the audience? Okay, I'll go on then. So, in addition to being a coach, any other specific skills that you've slightly alluded to them in your previous response, but are there any specific skills that one should be mindful of while becoming a mentor or while playing the role of a mentor?
I would always say, start from where the learner is in that sense, So it's good to have some understanding of the learning preferences of
Mhm.
of the other person. What works for them? Are they visual? Do they like PPTs, or do they like to reflect? Where are they? So a good understanding of their own frame of reference learning style is always useful.
Okay.
And that's about being open. I mean, that really talks to being open to how this person is going to take it, right? And going with the flow of that, not insisting that it is supposed to be in this way only. Learning can happen only in this way.
Mhm.
Being open to how they are receiving what you're saying. It may not be what you have expected, but it might be something that serves the other person. So being open to open and curious to see where they are, how they are receiving what you're saying. A very good understanding of the competencies is, I'm talking very specifically as a coach mentor, right? Very
Yeah.
good understanding of competencies and how they show up is uh, a very critical piece in becoming a mentor.
Okay. So the learning preferences of the mentee, understanding them, and navigating our path through, so that we are able to connect to the mentee, and also be open to different paths, and be open to different ideas and perspectives, and understanding of the coaching competencies are three of the key things that you're talking about.
Absolutely.
So, what are the career prospects of a mentor coach? What are the different roles, and because in your when I was looking at your career, I mean your career graph and about you, there is a little bit around you talking about, in addition to being working with various corporate houses, you are also a mentor coach. So, how are you using these particular skills that you've acquired, and what are the various career prospects that are there for coaches?
Um, so if I hear you right, it's about how coaches can become mentor coaches. That's your question?
Yeah, so one is how they can become mentor coaches, which you have already talked quite a bit about. But what are the various different ways in which they can they can help the coaches, or the industries, for that matter of fact?
So I'm not so sure about industries, but if you're looking at how they can, what are some of the things, um, career options for a mentor coach? It's
Yeah.
really about, um, there are organizations which run programs, credentialing programs, right? That's one place where you can get associated. There are places where people want mentor coaches outside of those training organizations. They want to go and have an independent. Like, for example, there are some training organizations that don't have mentoring as part of their learning agenda. So they just have classroom hours, but doesn't incorporate the 10 hours that ICF wants, for example. So they need to look out for other mentor coaches outside of the training organizations. So you sort of look, put it out there that you're a mentor coach. And just like you would do as saying that I'm a coach, you would put it out there and say, I'm a mentor coach. And if someone wants support in their learning journey, I'm available, sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. So two such, I mean, I can see now from my experience, it's just been these two pathways.
Okay. So can you give us any specific example of how this has helped you in the interview? I mean, how you have helped as a mentor coach in any organization or any particular individual, without, of course, taking names or.
Yeah. So there are some learning programs that I run, which helps coaches work towards their ACC and PCCA journey. And so people approach, and then we have chemistry session. We just kind of say, where are we? How comfortable? What are our value systems? How do we connect? And then we set up time to have these conversations. And very often, Aditya, it's also been a case of where I have learned a lot from my mentees, right? So sometimes you're challenged yourself, and which is a place to be sometimes, For example, I've had, this morning, we've had a session and somebody says, why? Right? So here is, so sometimes it challenges you to think about, what is it? What I might not have an answer immediately, but I might have to think about it. There was another situation where somebody, when you look at the competency framework, there's one part of it where they say, while you're trying to give direction to a conversation, which is by contracting where you want to go in this session, there are some questions around, so what is it that you need to resolve to get there? So there was somebody who asked, why should we always look at what we need to resolve? Why can't we look at something that we need to build? Right? So then I'm saying, yeah, why not? So that's the beauty of the partnership. I mean, the idea is to get to a certain place. Should we always look at things that are not working? Can we also look at things that are working that we can continue to build? Right? So that was interesting, the fact that I learned from it. I've also had situations where somebody has said, my client is all the time, they talk a lot, and I don't know how to conclude this session in 60 minutes. They give me so much details, I don't know how to bring it back. So sometimes it's about asking reflective questions. So what do you think is going on over there, right? You're taking on a coaching stance. Sometimes it's about saying, what is it that you're doing that you think this is happening, right? So there are some reflective questions you can ask. Sometimes you say, when they share their context, why that has happened. Right? The person has probably just spoken to the details of the situation, has not really connected with the person. So that's something as a bit of information I would just lay it on the table. Sometimes it's about somebody who's asked about emotions, that how did you feel then? Which is not as powerful as asking, how are you feeling now? Right? Emotions are always in the present. So sometimes it's just telling them that, right? So sometimes it's about asking reflective questions. And there was one situation where somebody said, I am not comfortable working with people who are not reflective. So the real question here is, what is it that you can do to make that session reflective as a coach? And what are some of our own biases saying it should be like this only? What are you losing by saying that I can't work with somebody like this? So a lot of questions that get triggered, and then they figure out for themselves sometimes about, you know what, maybe it's my own belief that all of them should be reflective, and reflective in this manner, in the manner that I want them to be. You know, these get highlighted sometimes.
Yeah, great. In fact, that also some of the points that you have highlighted in terms of the way we looking at things in a different perspective and all this stuff. It also goes back to you talking about the skills that are required. One of them being open, in terms of you being able to absorb what is coming from the mentee, as opposed to you looking at yourself as the only resource. The moment we start looking at the mentee also as a resource, then it's going to add a lot of value to both. Great one. So I would just like to pause and ask the audience if they have any questions. Yeah, Kinshuk.
Yeah, Priya, I know we were talking about, you gracing the platform as the first, speaker. And we are on our 8th session, right? So, in one way, it's a sort of a light bulb moment for us. We need to do better. But at the same time, we are very, very honored, to have you here. And my question is on the question of bias and gender, etc. So when you've been coaching, and you've been positioned as a coach, or let's say a very senior executive coach, have you come across gender issues, implicitly or explicitly, let's say in the shortlisting process, or once you're put in front of, let's say, a male executive, to call it out for lack of a better word, how did that pan out? I mean, what kind of currents did you notice, and how did you handle it? Is a question I have.
So personally speaking, Kinshuk, I have not experienced any such bias. And I mean, I'm just maybe fortunate. I've never had, a bias in the form of gender-based bias. But there has been bias when it comes to, have you worked in this industry before? Have you worked specifically with CEOs? Because I want to be a CEO. So can you coach me to be a CEO? So in a way, there is some sort of a skepticism, because I might not be coming from the same industry. So I have experienced some sort of a bias in that, in that sense. But in terms of gender, no, I haven't experienced any such bias.
That says a lot, actually. That, I mean, I mean, I personally thought, it works in the background, but that's a great thing to hear. Thank you for that. So,
and I think, Kinshuk, just to add to that,
I mean, I'm tempted to deflect it towards.
Sorry.
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
There's some, yeah. I'm also thinking that maybe I don't have that. I'm not looking for that bias. Right. So I'm not receiving it either.
That's a very powerful one.
That's still more profound, It could
that's
only
very
come
powerful.
from with your pedigree. Thank you.
Yeah. I honestly have never looked at it this way, in terms of, I'm not looking for that bias, which means that, and that's a bias in itself, looking for a particular type of bias. It's fantastic. I mean, this made my day, actually. Thank you very much.
Yeah, mine too.
Any other questions from the audience? Yeah, Thomas.
May I ask a question?
Sure. Please go ahead, Thomas.
Okay. Ma'am, just want to ask you, as a first step to become a mentor coach for people who are getting into this space, what should we want to become a mentor coach, but what should be the first step for us to do in terms of becoming a mentor coach? Can you let us know, ma'am?
So first of all, you need a credential.
Okay.
So you've got to have some sort of a credential.
Okay.
So your own credentialing journey is also very important. For me, it's about setting standards, right? As a mentor coach, not only am I setting a standard, I'm also saying that people I work with, I want to raise to a certain standard. So when they're out there and they call themselves a coach, they really are a coach, not this coach slash consultant slash trainer roles that many of, that you see, right? When you're saying a coach, you're really a coach. So that's the standard. So a lot of, what shall I say, reflection, introspection, work with yourself, Thomas, is very, very important. Working with yourself, understanding yourself, like, the biases, your own judgments. So in terms of process, it's about you being a credentialed coach and having had one renewal before you can register with ICF as a mentor coach. That's the doing part. The being part is who you are, how you work with yourself, and how you allow that space for somebody else to grow.
Okay. Yeah, that really helps. Thanks so much, ma'am.
And there's no place for pride there, right? There's no place to say that I'm going to teach you something that there's no such place.
Okay.
So I think
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah. Any more questions from the audience?
Yeah, Aditya,
Yes,
if I
Seema.
can ask a question to Priya.
Go ahead, Seema.
Hi, Priya. So I wanted to check, how do you refuel yourself?
I just love conversation, Seema. And I love to see, when I see somebody take a step forward, right? I mean, and I know that they've taken that step forward. I know where they've started. And I'm seeing them work with this, like for a simple thing like open-ended questions. So when I see that they have reframed and they have now been able to ask open-ended questions, for me, that's a big high. I said, okay, he's crossed that threshold. Yeah. Not that I've made it happen. He has worked. I truly believe in the other person that he has worked. There are some people who speak, the question is very convoluted and 2-3 times and, long-winded. Suddenly you'll find after some work, they ask very sharp questions. So you know that they have worked. So when I see somebody who has really worked with themselves, I'm that sort of charges me up. I said, I want to do whatever is possible to get this person to the other. And of course, you are always you're always open to learning. So it's never finished with a credential, right? You've got to, and I always every year I sign up for one learning program. That's a commitment I've made for myself. Right? And the third part is working with self. You know that sometimes you're not fully available for the other. So you've got to be mindful of how that shows up.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That was my next question, actually, which is that how do you keep yourself also in check? Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Seema. Anybody else would like to go with a question? Okay, so Priya, how did becoming a mentor coach help you personally and professionally?
Professionally, profoundly, because it makes me visit those competencies again and again and again. I'm never lose. I'm never losing sight of that skill. Right. So, because as you know, it's all about evidencing your skill, right? Evidencing your competency. ICF is all about evidencing competencies. So whenever I see it, I'm getting back in touch with it. It says, wow, how so beautifully this was done. So it has helped me professionally in a big way, because it has kept me in this space. It has helped me go deeper. For example, the new set of competencies that have just come, right? So this particular batch or cohort that I'm working with is working on the new competencies. So it's almost like we are co-creating. So I'm also learning from it. Personally, I use those competencies on myself, right? So asking myself, how am I embodying the coaching mindset? How am I managing myself in these conversations? How am I setting boundaries? So these are questions that I'm asking myself. So it's mostly professional, I should think, Aditya, more than personal in that sense. Yeah.
Okay.
I have actually two of them who I have worked with. Kamal and Ravi are here on the call. So good to see them here.
Great. We have Sarita who has her hand raised. Sarita, you'd like to ask something?
Yeah, thank you, Aditya. Very impressive, Priya. I have a very basic question, being new to coaching. Do you think mentors make better coaches, or do coaches make better mentors?
I don't know, actually, because I've seen a lot of great coaches who haven't been great mentors. I have seen, but I don't know how you can be a mentor without being a good coach. I'm thinking now. Yeah, I'm thinking as you're asking. I don't have a ready answer. My thought is that unless you're in touch with the coaching practice, you're just talking theory. And theory doesn't sell beyond a point, right? Theory doesn't work beyond a point. It's coaching is experiential. So I would think someone who is a good mentor would be someone who would also be practicing coaching actively, but not necessary that a good coach will be a mentor. I don't think that it works that way.
That's an interesting thought you're bringing, and I say this because many organizations have mentoring programs built in, right? But coaching nowhere comes in the scene, you know, because mentoring is across functions. It's not the HR domain. Right. Coaching, I don't know for what reason, still continues to remain a domain dominated by HR professionals. I don't belong to the HR, so I'm one of the outsiders, if I may say so, because then, you know, I don't understand a lot of HR models that get spoken about in coaching sessions. But this is what I have found, you know, that people just want to become mentors. I see the difference in mentoring by going through a coaching journey. Definitely, I do see that. Yeah. But then I say, how do we bring the sensitivity where mentors are being pulled up or trained to become mentors? How do we build in the coaching competences within organizations? I just thought maybe I could have some thoughts on that one.
So it's a way forward, I think. And I remember we did a program, Ramesh and I did a program for an organization, which is on developing mentors for leaders, right? When you're running a mentoring program for an organization, there are two parts to it. One is the skill of the mentor, which is, you know, there's a huge overlap to coaching skills, because you've got to be listening, you've got to be asking thought-provoking questions, yet it gives you the space to share something from your experience, right? To that extent, it's different. So there are a lot of competencies that a mentor brings, which are very much aligned to coaching skills, coaching competencies. But there's not enough attention given to how the mentoring program is run itself, right? So there are situations where a mentee is signed up but doesn't know what to expect. Sometimes they don't know the boundaries of what they can bring to a mentoring conversation, what they can't. Boundaries around what a mentor can do and cannot and should not do. Again, setting boundaries, like for example, confidentiality. Right? It's a big part of running the mentoring program, especially because the mentors are within the organization. So it's a program that really needs to be managed with a lot of attention and care and sensitivity. So on one side, the competencies itself is good, because then you're in a better place to mentor people, because those coaching competencies help. But the other part of it is building that program around mentoring itself.
Thank you. Certainly some food for thought here. Yeah?
That's in fact a great point you have brought in, Priya, where setting the boundaries. I was speaking to somebody. Unfortunately, I can't take the names or whatever, but this particular person was talking about a mentoring program that was happening in their organization, and this person says that, you know what, every on a periodic basis, all of us mentors we get together and exchange notes and talk about if there are any red flags coming through these conversations and all. And my question to him was, so how are you ensuring that there is confidentiality of the conversation that the mentee is bringing to the table? But they had a different take that whatever manager doesn't get to hear, if a mentor gets to hear, they would feed on each other basically, which I think is defeating the entire purpose of having a program like that.
Yeah.
That's a great point you've made. Yeah. Any other questions from Amit, I think?
Yeah, Aditya, there's one question which is, keeps on lingering on my mind. I don't really get a solution for that. Is that if you enter an organization and you've got to do an intervention, you see there are certain problems out there. Is it possible, do you realize that a person who gets in probably would have to wear maybe a couple of hats? He gets in as a coach. Does the coaching intervention. He realizes, okay, he reached a particular milestone. And then he finds out that he's also got to play a mentor role. Okay, because he got to optimize the results of the entire intervention. So you switch roles from a coach to a mentor. So is that also possible? Do you also see that these kind of situations do arise?
Amit, is that question to Aditya or?
No, I said that's for you. That's for you. Yeah.
So this is something that is important to be very clear about when you contract with the organization, right? What is the role I'm playing? So if I'm playing the role of a coach and I have a set of interventions, set of sessions that I've signed up for, it's always good to close that contract and start if mentoring is also required, look at it as a separate contract wherein everybody, and in each of these, everybody is clear about the roles that you're playing. So it's not an ideal situation when you play both. And it doesn't help, the coachee is not fully present there because they know that somewhere along the line they will get some answers without them having to think about it themselves. Somewhere it dilutes the engagement with coaching. And personally, I would create a space, very clear space between coaching and mentoring, because sometimes it's possible that they will see the difference, but I'm afraid I don't want to have blurred boundaries. I also want to be very clear about what role am I playing here. So optimizing results is something that you were saying, right? So what are we contracting for? What kind of results? And who is in charge of those results? Somewhere as a coach, you may take on the thing that these sort of results need to come through. Then the monkey's on your back. And then you want to try all sorts of things to be able to reach those. So contracting being a very key piece on what are the expectations of you as a coach? What are the outcomes that you're agreeing to? And how is that being measured in terms of behaviors? Because we don't have a quantitative measure. So in any case that is successful, those outcomes will be met.
I think it goes back to your point on the boundaries, basically.
Yeah. It's very subtle sometimes, it's very subtle that it moves into another. And it's very subtle how we as individuals want to add more value. We want to offer. And unknowingly, we have taken on the responsibility of making it happen also. But none of these factors are in our control. Organization is not, people in the organization are not, their working culture, none of it is in our area of control, right? So I would be very careful about that contracting piece.
You put it very well. Does that answer your question, Amit?
Yeah, I mean, see, I'm talking with respect to if I am from the healthcare space, I've been there for a very long time. I know how it really helps. I've been in those positions which, those guys are there at this point of time. So I get in as a consultant and they say, they're not aware what's gone wrong. I mean, why are the business results low? I mean, it could be various reasons, could be product, competition, the people. Okay, then you as a consultant get in and you kind of work out what are the gaps in the entire system. You say, okay, if it's people, then you get into the coaching mode, you select a few executives and you start getting into the coaching mode and you coach them and, make them come out with their own results and their own options that they want to execute. Then when you move on to the next level, they say, no, we don't even know how to do this happen. I mean, we don't know, we've never done this. We know these are the reasons as to why we are failing or whatever it is. Then you get into the driver's seat and try to help them out as a mentor. So do you think, now talking of switching roles from one to second and the third, so you got the whole bit, the entire L&D continuum onto that. So I'm just thinking in those terms. I mean, I'm very new to coaching, but then, this is what I've been on the business side for about 30 years. And this is what, I would think that probably a guy would need probably to optimize the entire solution, then get business results for whatever reason they're not coming.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Any more questions or? So what I would like to now do is introduce all of us to the next week's speaker. So next week we have a Yogacharya, Krishna Prakash, who would be joining us. He would give us, the next week's session is going to be slightly different from the way the previous 8 sessions have been. Here, Krishna Prakash is going to walk us through with certain practices which would help us hone our coaching presence and help us stay connected to what we are doing. So it's going to be an interesting session. Of course, there will be time for Q&A, but then it won't be an interactive one to begin with. So there will be a lot of learning. And I'm personally excited because I know Krishna Prakash ji pretty well. I've been to his Srimad Yoga Center in the month of March for about half a day, spent time with him and his family. So it's a great, he's a great guy with over 13,500 hours of collective experience in doing different things. And he is a life member at the Indian Yoga Association by BKS Iyengar. So it's a prestigious recognition that he has got. So hopefully I would see you all next week on this session. I would like to now hand it over to Kingshuk Ganguly for the question of the week.
Yeah, thank you, Aditya. So Priya, we had a few questions. We picked up one, which we felt would be appropriate. The question is, I feel very exhausted after a 60-minute coaching conversation, as if the whole burden has shifted to me. What should I be doing differently?
So I'll have to make some assumptions here to answer that question. I would look at what point in the conversation did it become your problem? And what are you really there for? what is the value that you would add? The value that you would add is the process, not the result. Result is for the person, the client to kind of coachee to arrive at. But how are you holding that process? So many things could have happened. It could be possible that you've over-identified with a problem. You have, as a coach, you have over-identified with the problem. It could be that it's in the sense, it could be just that it's too close to you. You've experienced something similar, right? And it could have triggered things for you. And it could be that something is taking you away from your presence. Really stepping back and saying, what happened to my presence? How was I present in this conversation? What happened to me before the conversation? Presence is also about how do you enter the conversation, right? It's about, is there some ritual, some way in which you can ground yourself to be present to the conversation? So how was that? So sometimes you just rush from one to the other, right? But this is a great awareness for the person who is experiencing, because what's happened is they have figured out that it's draining them. So watching your own energy in the conversation, I think, is a very powerful indicator of where you are. How have you positioned yourself in this conversation? What are you taking responsibility for? When did it, like I said, when did it become your problem?
Yeah, that's...
Sometimes it's also important to manage your physical self, in the sense, hydration is a big part. It seems very silly and simple, but drinking a lot of water, well hydrated, not a lot of water, but well hydrated during the session, because it's a lot of, it's not an easy exercise, right? We are so fully present. Not to take up sessions when you're not fully ready. All of that kind of helps you to not to get to this place. But having got there, it's a good one to recognize and ask yourself these questions to recalibrate.
So just building a bit on it, a lot of people who go through the counselors training, be it graduation, certification, and all these things, they go through counseling themselves so that they can clear their own blocks, and so that they don't start associating themselves with whatever they're hearing. So they clear their clutter first before they start embarking on clearing the clutter of their clients. So do you also think that having a coach, having a coach would probably help in this kind of situations?
Absolutely. It's absolutely important to have an ally. It can be a mentor coach, or it can be another coach itself, because one thing is decluttering. The other one is to know when it is getting cluttered, right? The awareness around, hey, I think I'm cluttered and that's why I'm asking these kind of questions, or this is how it is. There's supervision that's available. It's good to get into a practice of, connecting with a supervisor or a mentor coach or even a peer coach to be able to sort out, like you said, the clutter in the mind.
Great. And in fact, it gives us a good segue to the next week's session on helping build coaching presence and certain practices around that. Thanks a lot, Priya. Thank you for the thing. Any other questions from the audience?
I think Priya just used the word hi. Kamal here.
Kamal, you may have to be a bit louder. I'm not
hear you, Kamal. Yeah. Go on.
Priya, so is
yeah.
Can you hear me
better.
now?
Thank you. Is there a difference between mentor coach and supervisor, Priya? You just use the term supervisor. Is there technically a difference between the two?
So mentor coach there is an element of tell from experience, right? Because there is a expertise, if you want to call it, or experience that one person has, the mentor has. So there's an element of tell, teach, a small percentage. A supervisor is different in the sense a supervisor will, okay, I'm going to place three characters here. There's a supervisor and there is a coach and there is a client. The coach is having a challenge in the relationship with the client, whether it is a coaching conversation or something. They bring it to the supervisor. Now the supervisor looks at this coach as his client. So the supervisor is actually coaching the coach about the client. Whereas in a mentoring situation, they need not be coaching the coach. They could be a good time. Most of the time it is like that, but there's an element that you also tell. But supervisors are not looking at it from that perspective.
So a supervisor could well be a mentor as well.
Certainly can be a mentor.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Priya.
Thank you, Ramesh. Any other questions?
You know, every time we see, at least I see Priya and Ramesh together, you know, it just takes me back to our classroom sessions as a learner. And I have these gazillion questions in my head. And then I have to remind myself that this is a 1-hour session. Thanks.
But happy to have your questions, Kamal.
All right, I think we don't have any further questions. We can probably wrap the session up. I would like to personally thank Priya for coming over, and also Ramesh being there for this session today. And thank you all for joining us, and hoping to see you all next week. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Priya.
Thank you.
Thank you all the participants. Yeah.
Thank you, Priya. That was nice. Very nice.
Yeah.